Do not worry, assistance is on the way. I guess that could be the rallying cry for these group of stories. MPs promise food baskets to go to the neediest, and this is in keeping with the promise that the government made that people will not go hungry. Children will not go hungry. We will find a way to feed everyone. Several MPs who received food baskets on Tuesday to be distributed to people in their constituencies have pledged to help the neediest of the needy first. And I guess that was the intention, and that's great. These food baskets have gone out. They were originally set at 600 per constituency, and that's a lot of food. I'm not sure I could see a downside to giving people food, because once it isn't wasted, then somebody is going to eat it and somebody is going to have a nice nutritious meal, and I'm grateful for that, just as they should and would be. Last Friday, National Agricultural and Marketing and Development Corporation, NAMDEVCO, began distributing food baskets to needy communities throughout the country. This initiative from the Ministry of Agriculture, Land and Fisheries saw 2,000 families in 8 of the 41 constituencies receiving the first set of local vegetables and fruit packages and packages of locally processed chicken. The initial figure of 600 per constituency may be a promise that may not be kept, because there is some information circulating that it may end up being 400 per constituency. I don't know what caused the change, and I guess that information is yet pending. But to me, and it may be that I am sort of a cynic in many of these scenarios, I kind of wonder, how did the government procure these vegetables, and who did they buy them from? Who were the farmers that had their produce purchased, and what was the process that was carried out to get this purchasing done? The information may be out there and I just maybe never stumbled across it, but I'm curious to know, because reading enough history kind of makes you a cynic, especially when it comes to governments and states and how they run. Because okay, they may be giving you some vegetable produce, and who knows what the cost of these vegetables may be. It's being purchased with the state money, with the country's money, and oftentimes we know that politicians aren't very prudent with how they spend the country's money. Hey, don't forget to click that like button, and if you like what you see, share it to someone, share it on your WhatsApp, share it on your Facebook. The shares help to get the video out there more and increase the views. If you find that this content is really great and someone else should see it, well, share it, and that is what would cause that to happen. Don't forget to subscribe if you aren't subscribed already. You can click that notification button too, so you won't miss any of the videos coming in. And I'm trying to release them as soon as I can, so some may be slipping in faster than one per day, or sometimes slower than one per day. So click the notification button so you know. Speaking money, the government is also giving cash out to help out in this time of relief. And we see all of this ties together and paints a picture that isn't too beautiful in the long run, but there is some good in it, and it may be necessary in the short run, because some people may be needing these funds and this food and this assistance right now to continue living and to continue just surviving. IMBERT, $1,500 and $1,000 relief grants for persons who lost their jobs during lockdown. A salary relief grant for the month of May will be made available for people who have lost their jobs, that should read, during this period because of the restrictions put in place to stop the spread of COVID-19, Finance Minister Colm Imbert has said. Imbert made the statement today saying that a grant of $1,500 will be made available to those who lost their jobs at the start of the month, and $1,000 will be made available for those who have lost their jobs over the last few days. So it's aiming to cover as many people as possible. It's said and theorized that it's going to cover 20,000 workers, yes, 20,000 workers, and it's budgeted to cost $30 million. And all of this is coming on top of the money that was spent last year on similar grants and relief programs to help people, and things that were necessary because of the lockdown measures and because of the pandemic in the grand scheme of things. The official figure given for how much was spent last year on relief and on help on the citizens from the state was $5 billion. Finance Minister Colm Imbert yesterday listed $5 billion worth of help the government has given to citizens to deal with the adverse effects of the COVID-19 pandemic. But he has warned that now we are not, as a government or a country, able to do all of this again. What the Finance Ministry is able to do, Imbert said, is find money to help citizens who have lost their jobs or had their income cut because of the government's COVID-19 measures, get through this month. So I guess a lot of that is also contingent on the part where he says this month. So these measures need to be able to be stopped in a month's time. Otherwise, some real financial troubles would be facing us. But then it doesn't seem like these measures may be stopping in the next month, because it doesn't seem like the COVID figures are getting any better. Records seem to be being broken on the daily. And of course, we have to add a little shame to the whole business when we're talking about this, to shame our citizenry a little bit. So part of the reason now that some of the grants may take longer to get around to people is because of the double dipping. Imberth said more stringent measures will be put in place to ensure the funds are protected, because some people decide that they want to get as many of these relief programs as they can, so they'll dip here and then dip in another one and then dip in another one and go on and on. The problem with all of this money, as great as it is and as necessary as it is, I am not saying that they shouldn't spend it. I'm not saying that citizens aren't entitled to get some help in this case and some assistance, especially because part of the reason they're home is because of government mandated measures. So it makes sense that the government helps them. But then the part to balance with this is that the money doesn't come from nowhere. And for people to be spending resources, someone needs to be making these resources. So money must come from somewhere. It's not that the government can magically create this at their will and they're able to supply everyone's need through this method. If that was possible, then great, no one would have to work and we'd all sit at home and get fat, and well, I guess that wouldn't be so great either. Finance Minister Colm Imberth announced a COVID relief package that will cost between 70 million and 80 million as government seeks to mitigate the economic strain some are experiencing as a result of the public health restrictions implemented to try and halt the rise in the rate of new infections of the virus. You'd notice that that number changed a bit from the original 30 million that was announced when the $1,000 and $1,500 was first announced. We see it's gone up to 70 million, between 70 million and 80 million, and knowing generally how government spending goes, I'd go with the 80 million more likely. Imberth said, when I was asked to look at relief to support what the Prime Minister announced a couple weeks ago at the end of the month, which was really the closure of bars and restaurants and so on, we were estimating a value of about 35 to 40 million. Imberth said, with these new measures announced last week, it is expected to cost double that, in the region of 70 to 80 million that we've heard now. We don't really have a choice, he noted. We have to do what we feel we can do. If we have to borrow the 80 million, then so be. And I understand that amount of determination where, okay, these citizens are out of a job because we put them out of a job. Technically, that's what went on. We understand that it's the pandemic and everyone is sacrificing for that sake. But technically speaking, it is the government that put them out of a job because it's the government mandate that is requiring that some people don't work. So in this case, it isn't even like it's a handout. It's something where these people would have worked otherwise. They would have been productive members of society. And if given the chance right now, a lot of them may still work. So it's not like they're begging for handouts. And the way some may think of social assistance in the terms of, as it were, leeching from the public purse, these are productive members of society who cannot work now for the good of our entire society. So it makes sense we are doing something to help them. Imberth pointed out that countries the world over are sacrificing their debt to GDP ratios to borrow money to provide relief for their citizens. And unlike the United States and the United Kingdom, Trinidad does not print money, and we would have to depend on loan facilities and taxes to provide relief to the more vulnerable in society. That's something to think about in the grand scheme of things on an international level, on the global level. If in order for us to get more money, we need to take loans. That means when we take these loans, we need to create something to get back this money. Somehow we need to get back this money through some manner of productivity where someone would pay us. And then we need to pay these people back, whoever we get the loans from, in order to make this loan right. But in some of these large countries, they borrow money, as it will, by just printing it. So where does the value for their money come from? And that's one of my pet peeves, because in the global market, when they print money, in order to back up that value, the value must be extracted or sucked out of some of the poorer countries in the world that are pegged to these more powerful countries that just print money on a whim. But the problem with giving money isn't just where to find it, it's when you give it, what happens to it. And we already see what's happening to it. What happens when you give people who have nothing else just cash? They have to spend all of that cash. And when they spend all of that cash, they send all of that value, all of that cash, all of that money, all of that worth upward through the system to the people who actually have the assets already. So what ends up happening is the government pumps liquid assets, pumps cash, pumps liquidity into the bottom of the system to help these people to stay alive. And because these people have to live from the day to day, they're going to spend every cent of that back into the pockets of the already wealthier people. You want proof of that? Well, the Massey Group sees 20% increase in profits. How surprised can we really be? When the entire economy, well, not the entire economy, that's a bit of an exaggeration. In Trinidad, we've had it a bit better for a longer period of time. For quite some time, the majority of our economy and the majority of our commerce was up and about. But when you close down big aspects and big sectors of the economy and leave open the largest institutions, the institutions that are most able and most flexible, and have enough resources to be able to rebuff these different changes and mitigate these different guidelines that they would need to mitigate to remain open. So these are the institutions and the organizations and the businesses that remain open. All the money that ends up in the system, all of this assistance that passes through the system and is given to these people at the lower levels is just funneled upwards. Commendable. This is how Chairman Robert Bermudez has described the Massey Group's performance for the second quarter of its financial year, which ended March 31st, 2020. Bermudez said while the group's third-party revenue from continuing operations declined by 1% from the same period in the financial year 2020, profit after tax increased by 20% from $263 million to $314 million. And what that signals to me is that we need to find a way out of this very soon. Amazon has already had its most profitable year ever, and the holidays are still on the way. That was the headline back in October last year. They had their most profitable year last year in 2020. And then imagine to compound on top of that, this year Amazon posts record first quarter profits. So last year was a record year for Amazon, and this year has already started off to break the records of last year. But are we really surprised when everyone is home and just ordering in from Amazon? And okay, it's understandable. What choice do we have in a sense? We do not want people out there. What are we going to do? It could seem as though this pandemic has worked out to the benefit, according to how you want to measure benefit. If it's only in dollars and cents you're measuring benefit, it has worked out to the benefit of many of the world's largest corporations and many of the world's richest people, with many of the billionaires doubling their wealth in the time that many of the other people are struggling. Because the nature of what happens when this large amount of people are stuck without work but are still given some resources just to survive, these resources would all be spent. So it's in our best interest to figure out ways out of this pandemic as soon as possible. And it's not like the governments don't know, and this isn't necessarily a jab at governments, because many of the governments are willingly admitting it, that what is going on right now is very unsustainable. On a social side, I don't think it would lead to much progress either, because when as much wealth seems to be only concentrated upwards, and room for expansion of anyone in a lower category seems to be inhibited, it may be the time when social unrest becomes easier. And no one really wants to see that, least of all me. I don't think anyone who thinks they want to see social unrest and social upheaval in a grand scale is someone who's speaking out of a place of ignorance, because no one really benefits from that in the end, and everyone has a high price to pay for it. So whatever we can do to stay away from these things that we are seeing coming, and it seems a lot of these things, if we look ahead and just read and see the information that is already provided in front of us, we'd see a lot of these things on the way. See you in the next video.